Hey everybody, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Bill.
Have you ever asked yourself, what is your superpower?
Everyone has a superpower. Most people just don't know what it is.
We're going to help you uncover it.
This podcast is all about helping people figure out what their truly unique superpower is.
Superpowers, what's yours?
Hello and welcome to another podcast about superpowers. Max, so superpowers is not just what you're good at, your skill set. Everyone has a unique superpower. Over the next 30, 40 minutes, we're going to be discovering what your superpower is. I'm going to set this up. Max Snow is a very unique individual. Most of us spend our early childhood, trying to get good grades, be well-rounded, get into a good college. Max certainly did that. He got into Duke University. That is a single-digit acceptance rate.
It's an incredible milestone.
Right?
Yeah.
Incredible milestone.
Yep.
Great school. So, Max, you are a freshman at Duke. Take it over.
Freshman at Duke. At the time, I just started what would be my digital business, where essentially we were...
Wait. So you're a freshman at Duke.
Yes.
You figured out what your dorm room is. You had a roommate. What do you mean? You're trying to get your class. What do you mean your business?
Did you go to the quad? Did you go to a basketball game or anything before the digital business thing came about?
I mean, I wish. I think, honestly, I was accepted into Duke because of the business I started in high school.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to let's peel back.
We're going to go back to high school.
Yeah, let's touch on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I always, as a high school, I was very big into content, so film, TV, music, and it was always a matter of how do you get the film before everybody else, and how do you get it for free? And when I was in 8th grade, to try and get my way into screenings, that originally was a movie review website. And when I was 16, I went to a business program that Penn hosted over the summer. And I met a bunch of friends, and the idea was build a business. And the business we built was a digital music business that used data from artists to basically try and help artists get record deals. And instead of just this creative conversation, try and use numbers and predictive abilities to give artists something else to talk about.
It's almost like in the context of sports nowadays, there's more like analytical kids helping sports teams, sort of Moneyball-ish.
Exactly.
But using data to
So
tell a story.
so you're basically Moneyball for music.
That's right. That's how it started.
Okay.
And
Bill did it again. He takes my brilliant idea and you actually just make it a little bit better. Well done.
Yeah, listen, I've made a career off of that.
So start this music business, and this is back in 2014.
Got it.
So this is when the world is just waking up to what data actually is. And in 2014, most people either don't know what data is or don't have any protections on that data. So we would go to music managers, record labels, live ticketing companies, and we would just ask them for their consumer data. And we'd say, hey, if you give us your data on this artist or your record label roster, we'll run it and let you know insights we find. And very quickly, we were able to build a database.
Wait, stop.
Yes.
They gave
Collaborate and listen.
They actually...
They gave you the data.
Yes.
A record label.
But,
so I would say music, Bill, if you agree, is like generally the one vertical that I think is like the hardest for many different reasons. Spotify figure it out, but most that touch music, you die. You're in the grave. So you actually got record labels and managers to agree to this data pitch?
Yeah, so basically, they would give us access into
I think
artists.
the key is you got to call and say, I am either a high school student, a teenager, or a college student looking to, analyze some data. I think if you're like a data scientist at Google, they don't get the data.
Right, but you're coming in with like your buddies with backpacks, and they're like these disarmed conversation.
So Max actually, you got data that arguably nobody else on the planet has access to. But you somehow, as a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, got access to this data.
Wait, by the way, when he smiles and does that grin, it's kind of like,
It's like... But his superpower might be his devilish grin.
It's built a reputation for itself.
Good.
Okay, so you're 16. Most people are like under the bleachers, smoking weed and like hanging out. But you're getting data from Spotify and other places.
Well, we're getting data from record labels and managers who are giving us access to their, at the time, I mean, Spotify wasn't that big at the time.
Yep.
iTunes, if you want to call on a dinosaur, that was just recently deleted. We were actually getting all the sales data from labels from the iTunes history.
Okay, so you got the data. What are you doing with the data now?
So essentially, we were trying to figure out.
Go a little closer to the thing.
We were trying to figure out if Meghan Trainor broke on YouTube, right, and we could watch how audiences responded to her music and how they were listening to it. Could we predict how another artist similar to Meghan Trainor would respond, and could we figure out a career trajectory? Is this career going to last a song, or is it going to last multiple albums?
Is it going to be a one-hit wonder?
Exactly.
Nice.
And this is before, once again, streaming kind of changed the economy of how music was. It was really all sales-driven, social-driven, or live-driven.
And I imagine, not knowing that much about that industry, but I imagine there's a lot of risk prior to that as relates to, hey, we're going to give you your sign-on, you're going to have some level of agreement, but if it turns into a one-hit wonder, or they go sideways, or it's a Milli Vanilli or some other tragic artist, you're out.
Yes.
You lose money.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Well, music.
By the way, Chris has been wanting to
say Milli Vanilli.
Say Milli Vanilli like every podcast.
It's like, I mean, this is the first opportunity where it's logical to say Milli Vanilli.
Yeah.
Milli Vanilli.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we would essentially forecast how artists would perform in this setting to try and help both artists get better deals for themselves, as well as help labels figure out better ways to sign and what the right deal is to offer an artist. And we were doing that for a year, but what we wanted to do was, what better way than to prove it to labels as opposed to giving them the artist, not getting paid for the insight and not making any money through royalties onwards. Our idea was, well, what if we create a distribution company, a music distribution company, and we release artists using our data-driven method?
Okay. So now you turn into your own label in some respect as far as
exactly
identifying artists, and then
and then being able to use the
totally
data.
Normal behavior for that age. I mean,
yes.
Free concert tickets.
Yep,
I mean, it's pretty good to walk around Duke and say, I have concerts tonight. I got a ticket tonight. You want to go?
That works.
Yeah.
That works.
It's almost as good as saying I start for the basketball team.
No,
really?
No, there's no comparison to the basketball
comparison
team.
at all.
Don't ever try to do that again.
Max, his nickname was Zion before he even got there.
So we started our own distribution company, and this was right.
By the way, who is we?
Oh, it's just me. Yeah, it's me. It's me and my corporate entity.
Yeah.
It's two people at this point.
By the way, the we thing is strong. Let's stay with basketball. That's hard to the hoop and draw the foul.
Yes.
It's like whoa.
And
there's
one.
more.
By the way, that's an N1.
There's more of you.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Run with we all day long.
No, because in the back of my mind, he keeps saying we, and I was like, When I met Max, it was he.
Yeah.
Like it was one. It was one
Right.
person doing all this.
Right.
It was no we.
But you're never, when you're on your own, you never go sort of first party, third party conversation. Like if you never chat.
When I went to this business program, they told me that whatever you say, always say we.
Yeah.
It just makes it sound bigger and makes it sound more official. And from that point,
it's we.
So for listeners out there that went to your state school for $60,000 discount, you
just say we.
Just say we, and you can thank me for that later.
Just don't say we like on a date.
Right.
Oh,
right. That's the one
right.
It's the one time it may not work.
Right. That terrible context there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now. So we are doing this.
So this is around the time. So to go back to college real quick, I was missing a lot of school to pursue this business, and unlike the basketball players, Duke doesn't give me days off. They penalize you for missing school.
Yeah.
And towards the end,
I got to ask you a question. I apologize for interrupting. Did you kind of feel this was coming before you went to school to a point where it's like I'm going to defer, or I'm going to wait, or?
It's a great question.
To be honest, yeah. I mean, I definitely approached school with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Physically, I never had the same connection to my university that most
Did you
people
do
have.
it because of this classic stigma of like, make mom and dad happy, or meant to do this, or like I got into one of the best universities in the country, I'd be crazy not to do it?
Oh, you mean go to Duke?
Yeah.
Oh, growing up.
Why don't you just say I'm out? I'm going to go do this.
Oh, it wasn't an option. When I was going from high school to college, but it was developmentally, it was the right place for the first year to be outside of the home, live on my own, be independent. But at the end of the day, most people who go to university spend those 4 years trying to look for what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And, that's where me and I would say the rest of the student body differed, where I walked onto campus knowing exactly what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be, and how I wanted to spend my time.
Yep.
And so it was a pretty clear path forward.
I can't wait to get Max's parents on a future podcast and be like, how do you feel about spending $60,000 for your son to cut class from day one?
It would have been more than that, and they would have just like sort of shown that the house that they were going to buy, and I mean these are you may owe them an apology at some stage, but it's okay.
Absolutely,
whatever works.
Absolutely. I mean, especially growing up through high school, I would lose electronics privilege if I got under a 95 on a test. I was literally conditioned to go to school.
I think we need to start thinking about occasionally having parents join we have room at this table.
Yeah.
Something we'll talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
So towards the end of Duke, it was really it was a hard decision where do I stay?
By the way, so just for our audience, so the end of Duke means what?
Freshman year. So
okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
Spring of 2015.
Okay, all right.
So freshman year, it was really a decision I had to make. Where do I spend the next 3 years with my peers, going through school?
By the way, what was your GPA? That 1 year when you weren't going to classes?
Well, I mean, between underwater basket weaving, regular basket weaving, and documentary film studies, I had a pretty good average.
Okay, all right. So you did well, even though you were following bands around.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I would say like the joke was 2 weeks after school started, I went to the Toronto Film Festival.
Bill, just pretend we're just Bill and I here for a second.
Yeah.
We need to start shuffling papers at these things, kind of like they do on like Sports Center. That actually makes it look like we actually have the data.
Yeah.
So wait. Exactly. Okay.
So started a record label not out of Duke, but literally leaving Duke. Thought this is the best way to turn this insights business into more of a tangible, get some IP.
Yep.
All the boxes. And so we started going to artists, just like went to managers. And by the way, all of this was done by cold emails. Mm-hmm. So,
explain to the audience what a cold email is.
So a cold email is when you write a email to a person you have never met or have never talked to.
So the equivalent of like cold calling in the direct response, telephone game.
Yes.
This is now cold email.
Yes, and it requires you to guess their email if you don't have their business card handy.
Yeah, of course.
So in college, what I would do is I would create these massive lists from name the company, Daniel Ek from Spotify or Michael Rapino from Live Nation, where I literally emailed both of them. Daniel Ek, I looked at the email Sean Parker wrote to Daniel when he first wanted to invest.
And just use the same dot.
Wrote try to capture the passion and, talk about, really how you could use Spotify data to drive record deals. And Daniel Ek got back to me.
Of course.
And, Michael Rapino got back to me. And it's been this trend where I do not see that if I don't know somebody or if an introduction hasn't been made, I don't see that as it's a red light or a stop. I see it as it's an opportunity to put yourself out there.
But you have to be like a pretty good creative writer to get senior people who you've never met before as a teenager to respond.
It's a lot of practice. At first it was pretty savage. I would say that most of my emails weren't responded to. And it forced me to transform, if you will, how I write. I went from writing long thoughts into 4 sentences. Yep. And how do you consolidate everything you would want to say over the phone into a couple sentences?
Did you ever get past just the email superpower and guess social security or blood type or anything, or did you just leave it at the ability? And what was the craziest email that you were able? Who had the craziest email uncrypt? Is that right? Cryptid email. What was the hardest one that you had to do?
Honestly, Samsung. Samsung's emails they're pretty insane because they put the periods in different places, and you think it's a first name dot last name, but they throw you with
you remembered right away. Boom,
yeah,
Samsung.
Right. What's the craziest email you've ever written in a cold email? To the most outrageous person who responded right away.
That's a good question. I hate saying it, but at this point, there's been so many incredible responses back from extremely influential people where it's hard to point down just one. It would probably be Daniel Ek and Spotify.
Spotify. And do you, I'm just so curious about this. Do you, like, what's the opening sentence? Is it like, hey?
Hope all is well.
Really?
Yeah. If it's Monday, hope you had a good weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
Please tell me you never did Happy Friday.
Oh, you know I do Happy Friday
No!
every Friday.
No Happy Fridays.
Oh, God.
So
Of course it's fucking happy.
And so do you try to draw upon, hey, I was talking to X, you know, like how do you draw them in where it's not just, because, by the way, when someone sends me direct mail or I get a phone call, you know, and by the way, I'm getting spammed on my cell phone, I don't know about you guys, all the time now.
It's gotten worse.
And they're great because the number starts with my first 6 numbers.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, like, wait, is this one of, like, my kids? That, like, it's weird, you know? Mm-hmm. And anyway, and then emails. I get so many emails like, hey, Mr. Wise. So, and I delete them all. Like, I actually delete so many. I delete ones of people I know.
Sure.
Who are reaching out to me. So how are you getting through to people?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wish I could say I had a 90% hit ratio, but I think, you know, one of the things that I try and do is I try and really understand from whoever I'm writing the email to, what they do in their perspective in terms of how they're looking at my industry, a service like mine, and how they would work. And from there, I really try and tell this narrative in a way that would be different than from like other companies sending a cold sales email. I try and tell a narrative that brings to life my current operation. So at the time, if it's reaching out to like Daniel Ek at Spotify, it's trying to reach out to say, okay, Spotify wants better relationships with artists. Mm-hmm. So how do you create better relationships with artists? You give them access to their own data. Mm-hmm. So I try and find an argument to be made, mm-hmm. whether or not they've had that argument. But what I always find to be the most successful thing is if I can find a conversation that, let's say, a company is trying to buy an AI company, or if you're McDonald's and you bought dynamic yield, right? That means that Burger King, Subway, and everybody else is now looking for
They're paying
AI.
attention, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I try and look at the context of whatever vertical we're targeting, and then tell a story based on what their competitors are doing, what they're doing internally from what I was able to learn, and then also, most importantly, the unique factor that I believe my company would bring to the table.
Okay.
All right. So we can do a whole podcast just on cold emails, right?
Yep.
But we got to move forward here.
Yes.
So now you have access to all this data. What do you do with it?
So
what happens? Fast forward like a year.
So we're working, essentially we take this music data and we go to brands and we're saying, hey brands, do you have access to, you're spending money sponsoring artists, and do you even know how connected your audience is to the audience or to the artist you're sponsoring?
Can I ask you a question? So when you say brands, what's the exact example of brand?
Is it like Skittles? Is it like?
An example being like.
Is it like the Pepsi, Britney Spears?
Exactly, or like Samsung partnering with Rihanna. Right, where Rihanna is the face of a Samsung campaign, and wherever across her socials.
Okay. Drake, Louis Vuitton.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And by the way, you like that?
I did not know that, but makes sense.
Yeah, well,
Makes sense.
And what was surprising is when we started doing that type of cross audience analysis and measurement wasn't happening. So you would go out, you would see AT&T give Taylor Swift tens of millions of dollars to do a sponsorship analysis based on Taylor Swift's audience size and reach, not necessarily about the propensity to buy AT&T products tied to Taylor Swift, or even if Taylor Swift's audience is an AT&T client. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe they're all Verizon, maybe they're T-Mobile.
So give us like a specific example of something you executed on.
Okay. So Samsung's a good example. So looking at their Rihanna sponsorship, we matched up music data to Galaxy sales. Mm-hmm. And we were able to identify in New York, Detroit, and Chicago, it was 3 markets mm-hmm. we were piloted in, that it was like under 25% of the Samsung audience at the time engaged with Rihanna. So the whole sponsorship wasn't as valuable as people initially thought.
And was the data supplied or shared post campaign to say, hey,
Yeah, this was done post-campaign.
Okay.
It was...
But what's an example of an artist that, like, a brand that you connected with one of your artists?
Oh, okay. Let's see. What's it? Oh, Postmates and an artist we signed. His name's Adam Friedman.
Okay.
So we were Postmates and Airbnb are great examples. So we were like one of the first, also off of cold emails. We cold emailed them, and Adam, this unknown, unsigned artist, was able to get massive brand endorsements and a ton of brand synergy because we were the only team using Adam's listening data and tying it to brands. So we would go to Postmates and say, hey, did you know that Adam is engaging 1 million people across all of Spotify, YouTube, wherever, and 60% of them order food on your service?
Are you kind of scraping this data in sort of the traditional sense of like, I mean, it's public access, right?
Actually, when we started off, like the social data was public access, and then as we started to take the data and grow it, we were able to go to bigger brands and get them to give us their data through a license.
So the output of these use cases looking ahead could be you should spend less, you should spend more, you should spend on that artist,
yes,
you shouldn't touch that artist.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And then figuring out not just if you should partner with Rihanna, but is Rihanna's Facebook more valuable than her Twitter, than her YouTube, and where should the partnership live?
Okay, so you did that. What's next?
So from there,
because like you're only in your sophomore year now, it's like
well, I not officially.
Yeah. The timeline of your you never made it to your sophomore year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you retired. I mean,
during your sophomore year, you did this. You started your own label. You started connecting brands to the artists.
Yes.
Many of the artists were kind of the torso or the tail, right? It's not Taylor Swift, Rihanna. It's whoever you just mentioned I never heard of before.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I think are always the best places to start any kind of business. Go mid and long tail.
100% agree.
That's how you get your pilot. That's how you get your case study. If you try to go top, you're going to have long sales cycles in any example, and you can't actually prove that it works. So whoever Adam Levine is, like, great. If you can get somebody to be like, sure, I'll do it. All you're trying to do is validate an idea.
Oh, it was great. I mean, even like booking promotional. I mean, so Adam, for an unsigned artist, played more national television spots than any other unsigned artist in history. I mean, we had him play The Bachelor. We had him I was on The Bachelor, by the way.
You were?
Yeah, I had a nice little cameo in Bimini.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they invited us out. It was great.
Wow.
This is fascinating. I feel like we need an hour for this guy. So eventually you went past artists.
Yes.
And you started going into what?
So we went into the rest of the entertainment space. So the idea was we're proving this out in music where we can identify early IP and use data to not only connect it to audience, but do it for cheaper. So our thing was, well, if we look at, let's say, film and television, could we do something similar starting at a script stage? So this is now probably around, like, let's say it's 2016 to 2017.
This is like your junior and senior year.
Yeah.
What would have been?
I love how you keep bringing that back.
I keep bringing it back.
After he retired.
No,
I see what you're doing, by the way.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing. Yeah.
This would be software.
By the way, don't use the word cheaper. Go less expensive or something.
Okay, less expensive. Yeah.
Oh, so this is your sophomore, junior year.
Partially, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So what we wanted to do was never before has actual data been used to package a film. And what's kind of crazy when you think about that is you're talking about multi-million-dollar investments that are being done on IP, and there's no research that's being done. Like, the best case scenario that the film industry will do is there's like
no, don't they grab like 30 people off the street?
They do exit interviews, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's after the film's been made. Right?
Yeah.
This is we're talking script stage. So if a script's looking for financing, how does it source its money? And typically it's, you have an agent, you pitch it to...
Can I try something? So, slight challenge.
Yes.
Well, not challenge. More how much of it is dependent on data versus it could just be the perfect actor. It could be seasonal. It could be a macro economy thing. It could be something how people are feeling sad, happy.
I imagine in a world where technology and data rule most decisions in most verticals, the entertainment music space is driven by relationships.
Yes.
Everything Taylor Swift does becomes great.
Yes.
And just think about the actors, right? And actors go on like runs, right? And they go on runs for 10, 20 years, some of them. Some of them go on runs for 1 or 2 years, right? And I think the studios try to lock up the hottest artists and create and say, that sounds like a good idea if we put the right people in place. And
Will Smith.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Will
put him in
Smith,
for anything. You're good.
If a a really renowned sales agent puts their name on a project, it just inflates the value, the potential value of that IP, and that's where you have like festivals like Sundance, Toronto. They're major opportunities for independent film to sell, right? But the thing is that those decisions aren't data-driven decisions. Those acquisitions.
Acquisitions.
Yep. Sorry,
Acquisition. It's acquisition decisions. So you just made up a word, acquisitions.
Sounds about right.
Acquisitions.
Acquisitions.
Yeah.
So these acquisitions are done based on whether or not these these studio executives like the film, right?
So what did you do to disrupt this?
Well, so what we looked at is essentially we tried to identify audience by looking at we were sitting on the Pirate Bay's data set, so looking at all the piracy downloads. We were tying that to theatrical data, so tickets how they were going to movies, and then we had the credit card data, so we were looking at all the rentals. So we're sitting on really this massive database on how and what content people consume, and not just that, how they watch it. A lot of times, because of its nature, people throw away piracy, right? But when you put it all together under one roof, you're really looking at the spectrum of engagement from what someone's willing to steal versus what someone's willing to buy.
Okay.
And that could answer the question, essentially, what is this actor's worth to a project? So our best cases were when we would basically just take a book that you could buy on Amazon, buy on Barnes and Nobles, wherever, and
you got to just like kiss that thing. There you go.
Oh,
that's
perfect.
There you go.
There you go.
So we would look at how people would buy the books and specifically what people would buy books, and then we would be able to figure out, okay, if it's this genre of book, it should go to Netflix, it should go to theaters, it should go to TV. We could figure out who to cast in it and which acting combination would drive stronger streaming
Data-driven
numbers.
Hollywood.
So who loves you in this scenario and who hates you? Like, so I'm thinking about the creative, the CAAs and the ICMs of the world. Like, who are people that are like, come on in, and who are the ones that are just like, oh, this guy.
Like Ari Emanuel. Does Ari Emanuel love you or hate you?
Well, so WME we had a pretty good relationship with. So in 2017, I think we provided them data on every single movie they took to market, and I was like 20 movies, and I think 17 or 18 of them sold, which was
incredible.
above average.
And this is your junior year.
Yeah, I think so.
So you're basically selling data to Ari Emanuel.
Well, it was film finance team.
Film finance team. And, data-driven.
Right.
That's running basically
and
Hollywood movies.
You know what you're missing? Sleeping in a tent to get tickets to see Coach K in the rain. Like, you're not missing anything.
Yeah. Ooh, I know. No tenting for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've applied this. You've expanded your data set through cold emails. You've expanded past music into entertainment, movies, TV.
Yeah.
How are you getting paid on all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend. I mean, sometimes we would just take so our output would be an insights report. So clients would just come pay us like a flat fee for the report, or in certain cases.
So just to give a sense, because most people are, now paying, like your parents would be paying, or you would take out a student loan to pay, whatever it is, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for college. So you're no longer doing that. Like a report for a movie, how much you get paid on? I
mean, depending on the budget, I essentially made back what a year's tuition's worth in like one movie.
In one movie, so one movie, 1 year tuition.
Yeah.
All right, that ROI doesn't seem bad.
That's great math.
Plus, I mean, North Carolina is great, but I mean, New York City and Los Angeles, just the
Right.
We operated in entertainment for a couple years and worked there, and then that's when decided to hold off on that operation solely because we were hitting a bit of a ceiling.
Can I ask you a question? At that time, what was your motivation? Right, everyone has different motivations. They stepped in shit and they wanted to fix it, or they lost somebody, or they're chasing maybe some monetary. What was your motivation around all of this? And
free movies.
Free concerts, free movies.
I'm happy with that answer.
So earlier this year, I had the pleasure of meeting Max for the first time. And you know what's fascinating, if you think about this,
Did he cold email you?
No, actually, so his parents live next to my chairman, and so my chairman was like, "You got to meet this kid, Max," and I was like, "Oh God, here, like, fine, it's like a favor." So I kind of blew him off for a couple months, and I met him, and I was like, "Oh my God." Right. Yeah. So, but here's the other thing that I find fascinating is if you think about this, he's done all of this during his quote unquote college years. He also has the wherewithal, right? He's now because you're going to all the film festivals, like famous people know who you are. You're interacting with famous people. You're making, even if it's not millions of dollars, you're making like good money. But then you have the wherewithal to say, these are like one-off things. I can take the institutional knowledge I got. Let's stop this business. I can take the institutional knowledge I have, the data sets I have access to, and create a new business focused on something far greater than just music and entertainment. And then
But off the same principles.
And create annuity value, long-term value. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I met him, he talked about all the success, and I go, but you want to stop the success? Right? So tell us what you're currently working on now.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to not give credit to Bill, but before I met Bill, I didn't even know what ad tech was. And when he used mad tech in an email, I was like, what are you talking about?
Right, yeah, mad tech. That is MarTech and ad tech combined. See what I did there?
You did it again. You did it again, Bill.
By the way, I plagiarized that off of. Actually, I got to give Matt Kaiser credit for that.
Okay,
he coined mad tech, but then I made it popular.
Okay, well, everyone provided value somewhere in the chain. Yeah.
There was a supply chain exit.
So there was always a bit of a ceiling in terms of entertainment, both in terms of how we could use the data, the limitations in terms of working with clients, and how well they knew data, and how they integrated data into their enterprise. And with entertainment, across from music to TV to film, they're still in a process of growth in being able to understand data, what it means. But it's also, if you think about entertainment, it's an industry of people that have never owned their own first-party data.
Yep.
TV data has always been it has always been with Comcast or whoever.
Set-top box data, yeah.
Exactly, or with films and studios don't own their own data. Because if it's out of home, it's sales are happening through retailers. Yep. Retailers own that data, and theaters don't get the ticket data.
Right.
So if you think about it, these are industries that are essentially like really at a start. And what I wanted to do was find more of an industry where they're a bit of ahead, they have experience with data, and there's an opportunity to bring more of an advanced product.
I just when you said that, and just a little bit through my career, it made total sense just thinking about the limitations of like who's on the other side. Like there's probably no data science working at Paramount or Sony. No. There's no one that knows what to do with it. So no matter how great the concept or the idea is, you still need someone on the other side to be able to do some level. I imagine when you started, you guys were doing a lot customization and I imagine to scale this idea, who's on the other side to be like, I know what to do. I have a team. I can process it. We can work together. And just thinking about the entertainment space, that's not their DNA.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, the concept of combining different data sets to understand human behavior, right? I mean, it's almost Minority Report to them. If you explain this Minority Report, all right.
By the way, they can make movies about it, but they can't do it.
No.
So it's great. I mean, if only my clients were writers, right? Then it would be.
So now you're like you have something that you're passionate about that works, but now you're like, what are the applications and the verticals that can actually execute and run against this idea?
So when I met Bill, I was sitting on a couple hundred terabytes of first-party data.
Just a couple hundred terabytes.
Just nothing major.
You're not sitting on that today?
No.
Okay. Where'd they go? Where'd they go?
But Bill's been absolutely incredible.
I need you to start plugging me as well. I mean, I think you've already plugged Bill 6 times. Max, I know we're getting to know each other, but you can just throw out, and Chris, what you've done for me.
Oh, it's actually in Bill and Mai's contract. It's any public.
You have one of those too.
It's
deal with the devil.
It's 10 or more shout outs is what we agreed on.
You're up to like 6. Okay, so we meet, and obviously your life is drastically altered from that encounter. No, I'm only joking. So let's talk about Yobi Ventures, which is your new company.
Yes.
Talk about you cold emailed a certain someone who is a professor at Stanford. Take that story.
Yeah. So right as we were finishing up our career in entertainment, and the company was wrapping up.
I love that. So Max retired.
I know.
Max retired out of entertainment at the ripe old age of 21.
Yeah. So once we finished up the long career there, which by the way has significant representation of my life if you think about it.
Sure.
It was a matter of how do we take the data we already have, how do we scale it to get a better understanding of, really collect more signals on human behavior. And what I wanted to do was, I really believe the best data science and machine learning talent isn't actually, and this is controversial, especially on this podcast, but it's actually not ad tech. I really think the best AI talent comes from universities. And if you look at major tech, specifically Facebook, Google, and Amazon, and throw in Apple, what has allowed them to succeed to the extent that they have succeeded outside of the data that they control is the fact that they have essentially partnered with almost every leading AI professor across the country.
True story.
You see Google, like Google and Stanford have
Talk about the talent. Yep.
Yeah.
And actually, just think about most unicorns were spawned out of a university.
Yeah.
Right? Facebook, right?
Yep.
Google. I mean, Google's the first and best example.
Yes.
But yeah.
So you're seeing this top tier talent, and surprisingly, you don't really see professors working at ad tech. And so I cold emailed, there's like 50 professors, everyone who doesn't have an affiliation. I even emailed the ones that did have an affiliation.
Yep.
And within 10 minutes, this professor from Princeton, an extremely well-renowned guy, gets like cited 18,000 times a year. He got back to me in 10 minutes. Saying, listen, this is extremely interesting, and I'd love to learn more. Because what compelled me about this professor and specifically all of his work is rarely do you hear in ad tech people treat the data they're looking at as real people. They see it as an empirical data flow, and when you look at how ads are generally served, it's kind of this empirical analysis. It's like, did this person go to Ben & Jerry's? If yes, serve them these ice cream brands. Did this person do this? And it doesn't.
There's no emotional human element, consumer element around it.
Exactly. And what this professor has built his career on is essentially he has a degree both in computer science and in psychology. And what he's doing is he's blending the two. He's adding a human element to computer science, but he's approaching human problems through computer science.
Right.
And what's so fascinating about that is that you really don't see that happening throughout, let's say, the data companies that exist. Everything's raw segments. Everything is just direct deterministic match. But when it comes to forecasting, and when it comes to really being able to predict, you don't have a model yet that's built around human behavior and human decision making. So what we're trying to do is using all of the data we have, and it's a bit over a petabyte now, and we're capturing all signals from transactional signals to location signals to app usage signals, and the whole world of a consumer. I like to say it's very similar visibility to what major tech sits on.
Or Russia.
Yeah. Or China. But we're using that data not necessarily to operate as a traditional ad tech company. We're not trying to sell this data raw. We're trying to learn from it. And specifically, we're using all of this data to power a machine learning algorithm that would be able to accurately predict human behavior.
Okay.
And where we see a compelling opportunity is most companies that out there, they just sit on transactional data, or they just sit on mobile data, or they just sit on TV data. We put it all under one roof. And what we're doing with it is for the first time outside of major tech, we're really putting this big data set into the hands of capable AI and machine learning professors who would be able to theoretically produce a game-changing result.
Okay, and then give me like a tangible example of now we understand people's behaviors better, so we can.
Well, so it's still early in production,
Sure.
so we don't have any tangible use cases. But the idea would say you're shopping at a grocery store, right? The best example is any grocery store. You're competing with Amazon because Amazon has
Well,
Whole Foods.
Let's just say everyone's competing with Amazon.
Everyone's competing with Amazon, but
Yeah.
in the grocery.
But actually, you're competing with Amazon, like, without any data, without any insights.
Yes.
You have brick and mortar. They don't.
Well, you take the biggest grocery chain in the country, right? Their entire business is one data stream for Amazon. And when you look at capability, right, outside of being able to compete with Amazon's war chest of cash, they beat everybody with data. Because if you look at GDPR and
well, they don't have to predict human behavior. They know human purchase behavior.
That's exactly right. But these major tech companies who have also had interest in the same people that are staffing our lab, they want them to do the same exact thing, which is forecasting human behavior and own this model first party. And if you think about it, what we want to do as a company is give other companies, everything that isn't Amazon, the opportunity to compete fair and also in a privacy compliant way. We don't think that it's necessarily smart, costly, or liable for every single company to become a big data company.
How do you get the data today, and do consumers know?
Yeah. Most of our data is it's consumer consent. Where we're getting explicit consent. So on the mobile side, they're getting a notification. They're clicking on an app. And then from the other data sets, like transactionally, it's written into the contract.
Okay.
And so the concept, as I understand it, is you're starting with a base of data.
Yes.
Which is taking purchase data, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars of purchase data, combining it with mobile data and app data, combining it with music data, combining it with credit card data. So that's the pool.
Right.
Then you go to each individual customer and say, give us your first party data.
Yeah.
We'll combine it with this huge pot of data we have, and we're going to take it to this lab that's run by a renowned professor, and we're going to predict human behavior for you.
That's exactly right. And the client, or the partner rather, they don't ever have to touch the data, so that they can get the results of utilizing the data without the liability of managing the data.
So you have advertiser A who, their marketing team doesn't have the technology and data DNA. They don't have PhDs. They don't have data scientists, nor should they.
Right. Not their core competency.
So now, if you're not big data, you can go to Max and Yobi and potentially get, basically get data science as a service.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And where we see it as there's this interesting opportunity with clients is where companies are coming under fire in terms of how they use and how they process data. It gives bigger corporate clients who run the risk of intense fines if they, let's say, if they don't follow the GDPR soon, the repercussions of breaking the CCPA. If you look at these companies, we're basically enriching their data set and making it all actionable, because where I think there's a general communication or misunderstanding in the space is it's our clients, our partners, they're not interested in the raw behavior data. In general, even insights off of it. It's like, it's great, to present maybe. They want the result. They want to be able to take whatever ID or whatever addressable identity we're holding against the segment, and they want to be able to put it in a DSP or a DMP and activate on it.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is essentially we work on figuring out what the right query is for whoever the client might be, and then from there, basically service them back these privacy compliant segments that they can activate off of. And the best part is that includes multiple layers. It includes a layer of converging and matching all these data sets, and then on top of it, you're getting that data science layer. So in all of the segments we're pushing out.
So your goal is to democratize for everyone else what the big tech already has.
Exactly.
Which in essence would create competition with the big tech.
I really like the data science as a service.
You like that, right? You like data science.
I want to keep coming back there.
So
Bill,
Max,
you always do a great job sort of taken us through the journey and then connected it to superpowers? Are you
Yeah.
gonna do that
I'm getting
for
to
us?
that point.
Okay.
I'm getting to
Okay.
that point. But just because I was doing the chronological, so Max,
Now you're senior year.
How old are you now?
My bar mitzvah's next weekend. No, I'm 23.
Oh, you're 23. So this is like you're in grad school now, basically.
Pretty much. I'm going for my MBA.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Bill
got it.
Wise University.
There, hey, I heard that's very expensive. So listen, I mean, I think the audience can agree we could listen to Max for hours.
Hours.
And I
Hours.
feel like there's a lot more stories that we didn't get access to that I have because I've known Max now for a bunch of months. But for all your listeners out there, expect a cold email from Max at some point if you have any access to data.
And also, stop being so lazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Work a little bit harder, like Max.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And for all you college students, you better be getting good grades or you should just quit. Right?
And pursue something that's
Find your passion.
Find your passion.
Find your
Find
passion.
your passion.
All right. So fascinating. Obviously, the
Very
goal
cool
of this is to get a little bit of your background to find out what your innate superpower is. I kind of have a sense of what his superpower is.
Like I said, Bill, you do fantastic.
You
job
want
with
to take a
this
jab at this?
I want you to take the first crack.
Listen, I have never heard anyone use the phrase cold email. His superpower is his ability through cold emails to elicit response. In essence, what he's doing is he's predicting human behavior with a 4-sentence email to strangers. His superpower is the cold email.
Agreed with it. Superpower being the cold email. I would also add, I think through that cold email, your ability to
I have another one too.
Your ability to extract more information through this outreach to help sort of compile your puzzle is what I'm kind of hearing is pretty interesting. You're basically using all these sets of information to basically help you create your own flow to understand if you're on the right track and how to potentially sell or monetize.
So I'm going to combine those two things. The cold email, I think, is a skill set. I actually don't think it's your superpower.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a tactic.
It's a tactic.
It's a tactic.
Here's what his superpower is. I have never seen someone be able to get business and interest the way Max has without an actual product yet, right? So his new business, Yobi, has not yet launched, yet he's talking to Fortune 500 brands about ingesting the data. His superpower is he is the product. When he walks in or he sends you a cold email, he doesn't need a product because he is the product.
I mean,
what do we think about that?
That's it. He is the product, and then I don't know if you saw the smile. Luckily, we have that on camera.
Yeah,
I think there's a little bit of that's
that was the bar mitzvah smile.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Max, I agree with Bill, man. What a great story, and wish we had more time. We'll hang out more, but pretty awesome journey so far, and it'll be fun to see what this next chapter does for you, man.
Thank you both.
All right,
really
thank
kind
you.
words.
Superpowers.